The Bill and Kelly Show is recorded at Studio A at Executive Suite Squared in beautiful Hammond, Indiana. Now, here's Bill and Kelly. Hello, and welcome to The Bill and Kelly Show. Today we have a very special guest, a close friend of Kelly's, and I just was introduced to her just recently, so I'm very happy we met. And it's Patti Shaffner, who is with us to talk about a special music tribute that her and her friends put together for her late husband, David Cohen. And so welcome to our show, Patti.
Thanks, Bill. And as you said earlier, I'm from Gary, Indiana, and I even have my mug to prove it. And
I got to get one of those mugs. I was born and raised in Gary.
My commercial break now, Indy Bang Bang, the store that's in Miller, and then there's another one in Valparaiso. And you got to have your coffee if you want to keep rolling in the morning. Anyway.
Oh, yes. Yeah, for those that know Kelly, know that coffee is part of her life. She, one of the first things she did is had a coffee bar built in the house. Yeah. Three different types.
You guys gotta do like a video or something of that.
Oh, yeah. In fact, look up on her Facebook page. She's got a picture of it. 3 different types of coffee makers for every type of coffee you can imagine. Well, enough about Kelly and her coffee habit. So, well, again, welcome to our show. And we're so anxious to hear about this musical tribute that you've done for your late husband. And why don't you start out telling us a bit about yourself? And we already know where you're from. That's evident. If you just want to hold up the cup, I think that would suffice. But
I don't sing.
Otherwise, tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then tell us a bit about this project that you did for your late husband.
I will do that. So I grew up in Gary. I actually grew up in a little unincorporated area that was a 360-acre farm, and ended up in the Gary school system and went to work, graduated from work, and now live in the Miller section in Gary, and I have for basically all of my adult life. I became a vocalist at a very young age, at about 3 maybe, and that has followed me throughout my life, and I am still a singer-songwriter. I perform in jazz and folk and musical theater and blues, and I don't do rock and I don't do rap, but just about anything else. Excuse me. And I also got involved in community theater in 1987. And from there, in fact, that's how I met Callie, was doing theater. And I love acting, and I also love directing. So I've done that. Although I had a day job, or a day gig, I was a dental hygienist for 30 years. The music and the theater and the art has always been, that's the thing that feeds my soul. And so I continue to do that. In fact, on Thursday night, I'm going to be one of the judges for the Acorn Songwriting Contest in Three Oaks, Michigan, along with Corky Siegel and Peter Carey. And I'm very excited to be participating in that again.
That's an amazing place up there, isn't it? The Acorn?
The Acorn is just fabulous, and they're doing this. In fact, they put the tickets on sale, and within an hour they had sold out the tickets because they're doing an outdoor event, socially distanced, Ravinia style, everybody with their masks and minimal amount of social contact or physical contact. I don't want to say social contact. Maybe we need to change that whole social distancing thing to physical. Yeah. In any case, they're doing that, and those tickets sold out right away, and then they're making it available on Zoom. And so people can tune in live to the event because it's usually one of their most attended events. I've been the first runner-up in the contest twice myself. And so I continue to do the music and the arts. And so kind of how this happened was my husband was To say he was amazing is of course my personal opinion, but there were a lot of other people who felt the same way about him. He was a nurse. He was an artist himself. In fact, this he carved bone
Oh,
and
wow.
jade, and this was something that he did for me. And he was a musician. He played with me. We had a trio together. He was, in addition to being a nurse, he was also a certified neuromuscular therapist and lymphedema therapist, certified holistic nurse. He taught Qigong. He was a writer. He wrote a book. And when he died last May, um, one of my friends, and you may or may not know Jeff Sarver. He's a local musician from the area. And he came to the house just totally crushed. He said, David had saved his life when he had a really bad time. And he's a creative person himself. He writes music and is always in the process of creating something new. And in this accident, he had cut off a couple of fingers. They managed to reattach it. But what he did was start calling in musicians to come into his home studio and record. And he called David. And David went in and he recorded bass and drums and percussion and overtone flute and steel pan hand drum. And Jeff had forgotten about these things. In November of last year, he called me and said, "Hey, you're never going to believe this. I found all these files and it's all Dave, and we've got to do something with this. We've just got to do something with this. And I don't know what to do, and I don't want to do anything unless I have your approval, but let's do this." And so what we did was we started putting together the music that David had recorded with Jeff with some of these things that David had written in his daily blog and his book. And it became a combination, or a collage, if you will, of music and spoken word. And we put this together in this album that is a framework of who David was, as well as some of my grief process. And John Carpenter from Thunderclap Recording Studio did the mastering for us. He thinks it's brilliant, and I take John's opinion with some weight. So I'm really happy about the way that it's come out, and it's also given me a way to process my own grief. But if I can, let me tell you a little bit more about who David was.
Oh, please do.
All right. So Paca Dave, and Paca was what his first granddaughter called him because she couldn't say grandpa, and he adopted it and he loved it. So he became Paca Dave. And he was someone who could, with a touch or with a few words or no words, help people relieve their suffering by just speaking to their body with the way that he was able to do a deep kind of massage and muscular work, as well as bringing a lot of silliness to it. And we do tend to take ourselves too seriously. And he knew that, so he invited play. And David was born in Oakland, California, but he landed in the Midwest when he was in his early teens, and that was kind of lucky for me. And he became a father to two children, and they were unfortunately ripped from him for 7 long years through a divorce process. And ultimately, only one of those children came back to him, and that is his son, Ben, who is as much my son as as either of my own biological children. But David carried that hurt around his lost daughter very faithfully. And he feared that if he didn't carry that hurt, that it would mean that he didn't care. And I knew that nothing further could be further from the truth, but that's how he felt. So he did become a registered nurse, and he realized that he was good at caring for others. And then, as I said, eventually he became a neuromuscular therapist, holistic nurse, and all of those wonderful letters that never really define, but they give you some kind of weight in the world. And so he learned to read people's bodies and where their pain was and where their hurts were beyond the body. And he used humor and a gentle nudge to speak to that truth that he could feel when he touched them. And many, many hundreds of people came to see him. Like all of us, he had his own demons, and he wrestled those demons and met them face to face, and suffered a heart attack in Hawaii in 2012. And after that, he began to blog daily and on his Qigong therapy page, as he was a Qigong instructor. And he's got over 9,000 followers from around the world on that page. And he wrote a book based on those pages called Pocket Dave, Messages from the Left Side of My Heart. And he became kind of this holy fool. In fact, I was wanting to share something that he had written about himself, because he liked to be silly on his own personal Facebook page. And he had said, "I am so humble that the saints want to know me and the sages want to be me." Now that's pretty fucking humble. Clearly, I am the serenest. And that was his sense of humor. And if you know anything about the holy fool or the wise fool or crazy wisdom, it's all about this paradox. And so a lot of what we tried to do with the album was bring that paradoxical experience of humor along with his experiences and the grief. And so I'm hoping that with this, and we titled it Messages for the Heart because of David's healing ways, that others are able to be helped by the words that he wrote and by the music, in that sort of gently loving, humorous way that he put this together. And he always said, people are a problem, but it never stopped him from loving them one at a time.
Yeah. Oh, he sounds like he was an amazing person. He absolutely, boy, I wish I could have met him. Now, we do have, is this an appropriate time to play one of the pieces?
Absolutely, and let me tell you about that one, this piece that we're going to play a little bit. It's titled For Kelly. Kelly is a friend of mine from New York who, a month before David died, her son had a spontaneous embolism that happened in his spine, and he is now paralyzed from the ribs down. And it has just been this medical mystery, and she's had to continue to deal with her 18-year-old son being in this state that is probably going to be for the rest of his life. So she and I have been in close contact over the last year. And one of the days that she was writing on Facebook, she wrote about all these places that she had been crying, and how she couldn't even remember all of them, but because of her situation, she found herself constantly in tears. And it inspired me because of the way that I've felt in this last 15 months. So this piece is called For Kelly.
So here we go.
A friend of mine is going through a very, God, I actually hate that word, but can't think clear enough to find better at the moment. A very rough time. It's not just now, but has been 9 months worth of agony and angst and worry and frustration. She posted today about all the places she has cried that she could remember. Never mind public displays of affection. Public displays of grief and pain are much more difficult for people to witness. Yet, there we are, she and I and others, crying at the most inconvenient times and in the most unexpected places. I wrote her a little Seussian-inspired poem. For Kelly. On a plane or on a train, in a car or bus, at dinner or at breakfast too, those tears just seem to follow us. On days that shine and those with clouds, some silently and some out loud, when talking to a trusted friend, or even strangers in the end. In bed or lying on the floor, those tears just come and then come more. I never knew so many tears were there inside of me, nor how they find their way outside until I cannot see. Perhaps I'll make a desert bloom, or flowers enough to fill a room. From all this water surely, some small thing must grow.
And that's it. That was beautiful.
Thanks.
You know,
Thanks.
a little piece of it was kind of whimsical, but it just had, you could get the sense of who David was from that, which is amazing, amazing, a tribute to him.
Thanks. Yeah. And then, as I said, there are a lot of pieces on the album that are David's writings. Of course, I ended up doing all of the reading. I would have preferred for his son Ben to do the reading because his voice was closer to David's voice. But as Jeff and I talked about it, he said, you know, you knew David. So you're going to be able to put into what he's written something more, because he read his pieces to me every day. So I got to know what his own rhythms were. So I suppose, even though it's a woman's voice reading this guy's stories, I think it works.
Yeah, it sounded great. I think it was a good match. So
Yeah, I think so too. And Jeff was really so brilliant. Some of the pieces, if you're familiar with Ken Nordine and the word jazz from NPR, yeah, some of them have that kind of feel where there's an underlay of voices, where there's music being woven in between. On the album, one of the pieces is an instrumental piece that I wrote, and in my entire life, I had never written an instrumental piece until after David died, and I kind of feel like it was him guiding me to write that. And that one is actually called Messages from the Left Side, in reflection of his book. Another piece is vocal improv. It was all just spontaneous, created in the moment. Jeff captured all of that and mixed that together because I do improvisational singing. Other than that, there's one other piece on the album that is all instrumental, and it is David playing steel handpan drum and overtone flute, and some other minor percussion in the background. And it's almost like it's an 8-minute piece, but it's the kind of thing you could sit and do a meditation to or do yoga to. It's very calming and very relaxing.
Yeah, when you've said word jazz, you made me remember an NPR program that was on, was one of those that they put on Sunday nights for people who like to chill, called Word Jazz, and it was nothing. Are we thinking the same? Have you heard of that one?
Exactly, Ken Nordine's Word Jazz on NPR.
Oh.
That's the one.
I am telling you, he had the deepest baritone voice. I still remember he had this very soothing, deep baritone voice. It just matched with everything that I was a huge fan.
Yeah. Well, I used to listen. We used to listen to that. Sunday nights, as you're getting ready to go to bed, turn on Word Jazz.
Yeah,
so this is sort of a Word Jazz album in a way.
I wish in fact, now that we mention that, I'm going to have to to Google, see if I could find some of his work still out there.
Oh, I'm sure you can. I'm
Yeah,
sure it is.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So getting back to this, why don't you tell us a bit about the album? How can someone get a hold of it if they want to purchase it or listen to some selections?
Absolutely. So we, in the time of COVID, decided at this point that putting a physical CD out there was going to be more difficult. If I have a gig, I can bring my CDs and people may want to buy the CDs, or maybe, a handful of people want to order them online. And so we realized that it was going to do us much better with this album to distribute it digitally. And so I did that. So that means that you can go to iTunes, you can go to Amazon Music, you can go to Spotify, Deezer, Tidal, YouTube Music, even YouTube, and Bandcamp. And there are others out there that I don't even know the names of that are also streaming services, digital streaming services. So you can purchase. If you're a Spotify member, you can at least listen. On YouTube, you can listen to pieces on there. The title of the album is Messages ... for the Heart, and not from the heart. And I'm sure you have the picture of the album there, that when you are able to show people what the album cover looks like, or if you just Google my name. In fact, on Bandcamp, Patti Shaffner, one word, .bandcamp.com, and you can go to my page, and Messages is right there on Bandcamp.
Well, let me ask you. There was it looked like an album art that was on the song that we just played off of YouTube.
Yes,
Is that the album art?
that's the album
Ah,
art.
well, people saw it. I know. I gotta apologize. You cannot see it because we're recording this, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was a line drawing of or a drawing of David, right?
And it's actually a photograph that I managed to do the graphics for and
Hmm.
put it through something that makes it look more like a comic book or a line drawing, just to be able to give it maybe a little bit more appeal visually, rather than it being a photograph of somebody that nobody knows. But he's standing in Hawaii after his first heart attack doing a Qigong pose
Uh,
uh, around his heart. So that was done at Laupahoehoe on Big Island, which is a point down there where I took some of his ashes last year, actually.
hmm.
And
Boy.
so, yeah, I managed to do that. Fortunately, there are options out there for people who are, like me, not exactly graphic designers, but have an idea in mind and to be able to express that.
Yeah. So, gosh, because this is still fresh for you, and by all means, our condolences. But can you talk about the stepping points of going through grief in this project? Because, in a sense, didn't this help ride that wave of grief, that last wave that you sometimes feel?
Absolutely, I can. And I think we mentioned in the pre show when we were talking that I feel as though we are, as a globe, not just a country, but as a globe, we're going through grief on so many levels.
Hmm.
Certainly the pandemic and the divisiveness that is going on around the world right now. So there's a grief that we are all feeling. And to have that be a very specific thing, like the loss of a loved one, you get immersion training real quick in how to deal with that. And because we are so inadequate with understanding what someone is feeling or going through, mainly because we can't know, we can't know what each person is feeling, but we can recognize someone's grief without trying to fix them. Because that's the first thing we want to do. We want to say, oh, I'm so sorry. Well, it'll make sense to you somewhere down the line, or you'll make a thing of beauty from it, or you will have all these wonderful things that will pop up in your life. And he wouldn't want you to be sad. And we just say those things because we don't know what else to
Yeah, we
say.
think they help, and sometimes, and and
We,
with the kindest intentions, but sometimes it's kind of like you.
Yeah, and so it's what I've discovered is it's better for the person who's grieving to have you say nothing. And I don't mean like to disappear. I mean to just be with them, to just actually sit and allow them to be sad without having to try to make it better or change it.
Right.
And some of the best moments for me were people who would do that and who would have literally come to the house and we would just sit. And sometimes there'd be tears and sometimes there wouldn't. But to be present for someone who's grieving without trying to make them feel better, because there's no making that feel better.
No.
So one of the things that I started doing right away is I am also a writer. Obviously, I write songs, but I started blogging every day, much in the same way that David did. Blogging helped me to process. And it helped me process everything from my anger and my shock and the deep sorrow and sadness and the sense of missing, fear, all of these emotions that bubble up in you when you're feeling grief. And from those, they tended to take many times the form of poetry for me. So some of those are actually on the album. When Jeff called with the information about these tracks that he had found of David's and how we had to do something with them, this was an opportunity to not only put David's expressions of who he was as he came ever more into integrity as a person himself, but also an opportunity for me to bring my grief to the table without making people feel like this was something morbid. And it's not. It's meant to be something that's healing. And the album is meant to be healing. Yeah, okay, so it's got its moments that are deeply sad, but it's also got moments of humor because that's who David was.
I was about to say, this is a celebration of who David was, his life.
Absolutely it is. When we had and it's like lovely that you said celebration of life, because what we did last July was we had a celebration of life because I didn't want a memoriam because a memoriam felt like it was looking behind, right?
Right.
And David has a legacy and that legacy is going forward. So let's celebrate who he was when he was living and how he's going to continue to be carried in people's hearts and minds. Terry Pratchett, and Terry Pratchett's
Yes.
writings, right? So he said, do you not know that a man is not dead as long as his name still remains on one person's lips? And so for me, this is another way to carry David forward and introduce him to more people who may find themselves feeling buoyed in some way by some of the things that he had to say.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait to go up and listen to some more of those songs.
Cool.
Yeah.
If I may, let me give you the from the booklet that I created, the So Why Listen to This Album?
Mm-hmm.
Aren't we all a little bit frustrated, scared, depressed, uncertain, and looking for something or someone to give us perspective and a reason to keep going? Aren't we all teetering on the edge sometimes? Or maybe it's just another day and a fine one at that, because the truth is everything changes in the blink of an eye and life is short. When I say life is short, I mean that while it may not feel like that on some days, trust me on this. Before you know it, you will meet your own expiration date. You will breathe your last breath and you will wonder at how you didn't even notice how quickly it was going. You and or your loved ones will expire, and if you are the one left behind, you will find yourself holding a bag of pieces that used to be your heart, and you will wonder how you will ever find the strength to put it back together again. David knew from his time in working at hospice, when he placed a dying man's hand into his wife's hand, from watching people struggle with the pain of losing someone dear, from his own loss of his daughter through estrangement. He knew because he tried himself to leave from a heart attack at 54, only to have me call him back, and it woke him the fuck up. Those last 7 years we got were a bonus tacked onto his life, and he found a way to make them count. His healer skills became honed to a level of understanding that allowed him to reach even those who were calcified in their disease. And I say disease. So maybe it's worth hearing about some of what he has to say. And you'll hear a bit about what it means to grieve with your eyes wide open, from my perspective. Plus, you get a little music, underscoring, spontaneous vocals and instrumentals. We are all voyeurs at times, especially when we know that it could be, might be, will be us in some way at some time. So we like to peek into the window that might open your own soul and hearts a little wider. To do so, 'tis kindness.
That was beautiful. That was absolutely beautiful. Well, Patti, I gotta tell you, well, thank you for introducing us to David.
I'm so happy that I got an opportunity to do this.
Yeah, this is absolutely wonderful, very wonderful, and it calls to mind a couple of things. It gave us a look at David's life, and also it makes us, it's one of those moments, wake up moments in life. It's it kind of makes you self-reflective, and am I doing the best out of life? How am I impacting others? How am I impacting the universe? And it sounded like David Boyd definitely had his impact on the universe.
He did. And so now it's my job to carry him forward and to be the best person that I can to do just those things that you were talking about, to be reflective and to make sure that I am spending my life in a way that is meaningful for me, because I don't know when my expiration date is. So why not be here as present as I can in this moment? And that's what David wanted people to do as well.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful, boy. Well, at that, we probably better start wrapping up the show, even though I hate to, because I would love to play all the pieces that you arranged for them, because they sound absolutely wonderful. Very relaxing, and makes you reflect a bit about, David, not just David, but self-reflective, and that's so important to do now. And I imagine David's work would have been muchly needed right now with what is, oh my gosh, what we're going through now. We're going through some emotional strain and physical strain that I don't think we ever have experienced before.
It's true. I if I can mention also, then if people also want to find me, if you Google my name, you'll find me. But my website is Jazz Dakini, and that's JAZZDAKINI at .com. I'll give you my email address too, at .com. And I am actually in the process of adding David's book to the website, so that people, if they're interested in getting his book, which is a 365-day reader, so you can open it to any day and go, here's a little paragraph of wisdom for you for today.
Awesome.
Then they can contact me about getting a copy of the book as well.
Awesome. Boy, oh boy. This has been kind of a chill moment for me. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much for all this information and sharing David and your tribute to David, which, by all means. And we'll make sure when this the program drops that we'll put links to everything for people who want to hear or maybe want to purchase. So
awesome. Thank you, Bill, so much. I am so grateful that you allowed me to come on today to be able to talk about this. It's only been just released for 3 weeks, so it's brand new.
We are so honored that you asked us to do this. This is great. So we'll get all that information out. And Patti, please have a very restful, peaceful day. And I don't think I'm going to have to tell you, like I do have to remind our viewers, please be kind to your neighbors, and have a very stay safe, and we'll say goodbye for now.
Bye, Bill. Thank you.
We'll see you.
This episode of The Bill and Callie Show is brought to you by
Dutch Farms, maintaining a family tradition of quality for over 91 years.